quite a few of the folks from Saturday Night Live came down to WRNO at one point. They were going to do a show from New Orleans for Mardi Gras, but I got a phone call saying that they were coming. I said, oh, great. I got to interview the cast of a TV show that I've never, ever seen, because I was always on the air when they were on the air on Saturday night.
That's the voice of JD the DJ, who's heard weeknight evenings from 7 p.m. to midnight Central Time on Tix 94.3 in New Orleans. And if you want to check out his website, go to jdthedj.com. That's jdthedj.com. Now, how many astronauts did you get to meet over the years working for Lockheed?
Quite a few. They came to the rocket factory, as we call it, quite often. Whenever we were, delivering a tank or getting set to, we at some point started making the tank out of a aluminum lithium alloy, which was called the lightweight and the super lightweight tank, which took a bunch of weight. It was 2219 aluminum originally. And even though it's a very thin skin, it made a hell of a lot of difference in the weight when we went to the aluminum lithium alloy, which the drawback is it's much harder to weld. But we had, if you want something welded, you go to Lockheed Martin because they know how to do it. And basically, we right between the first shuttle launch and the I guess it was the third tank, we just didn't. The first two were painted white, and the paint weighed 800 pounds. And if you take 800 pounds of paint off the tank, you can take 800 more pounds of payload. So that was a no-brainer. We should have thought of that a lot earlier. I guess the thinking was the paint would help seal out, water from, seeping into it's basically a foam, a spray-on foam insulation on the, as we all know from the Columbia accident. It's kind of fragile, if you will, and so they thought maybe paint would be a good idea to keep water from getting in there. And then it's a closed cell foam, but you don't want water getting in there and freezing and popping foam off, because we had enough trouble with liquid oxygen cooling it down from the inside. So. But yeah. I have on my wall here at the house, I have a signed photo from one of the people who walked on the moon, and there's only been 12 of them so far.
Wow.
John Young. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, I think he used a Sharpie with disappearing ink, because I'd had it hanging in my in our previous house, some over in Slidell, Louisiana. It had started to fade, and pretty drastically. So, man, I got to do something about this. And of course, I read up on the internet about restoring autographs and that kind of stuff, and they all said, "Don't do it. Leave it original." So I just took the original down. I scanned it with my scanner, and turned the contrast way up, and managed to get most of the signature back. Basically looks like a real signature now, and the only drawback was the sky behind the shuttle taking off looks more like midnight blue than sky blue. But that's the one I've got hanging in the living room, and I've got the original squirreled away in a dark closet. So I haven't looked at it lately, but I'm hoping it hasn't faded anymore. But and it was strange because I had. Several astronauts. It was an honoree event at the Cape, and I had Ken Cockrell and Andy, the British astronaut. I can't think of his name now. Andy something or other. They all signed this picture, and some of their signatures are perfect. There's no fading at all. But whatever pen John Young was using at the time, just kind of, like I say, I swear it had disappearing ink in it. So
was it Andy Thomas?
Yeah, Andy Thomas. Yeah, he was a trip. He was fun at the Tacky Tourist contest at this event, and my wife and I, since we were from New Orleans, we got to lead the second line around the reception room when we had a big festivity there.
He's married to another astronaut and physicist named Shannon Walker, who's originally from Texas, Houston, by the way, where the Johnson Space Center is. How often did you ever go to the Johnson Space Center?
I think I went there once. We really had little to do with the Johnson Space Flight Center, other than when the launch happens at the Cape, they hand it over to as soon as the shuttle clears the tower, they transfer the control of the mission goes to Houston. But we had our own mission support room in New Orleans, and we were there essentially whenever there was a mission in the air, but it was only really populated during the launch because the launch was basically our baby, to make sure the shuttle, the external tank worked as promised. And so we didn't interact much with Houston. Oh,
okay. Yeah, it was. I didn't realize that the shuttle was kind of like the nerve center, because I know Cape Canaveral is where the shuttle launches from. I didn't realize New Orleans had something to do with that launching process.
Yeah. Well, as I said, we built the New Orleans. I say we. I wasn't working for Boeing at the time, but Boeing built the Saturn V booster rockets at New Orleans East, and it's called the Michoud Assembly Facility is the name of it. And in
fact, it's been called America's Rocket Factory, the nation's premier site for manufacturing and assembly of large-scale space structures and systems. That's what it says on NASA's website.
Yeah. We called it the Rocket Factory quite often.
That's great. And wow, I didn't know this about you. I remember seeing a little bit of a blurb there, and I didn't realize that you kind of like did both jobs simultaneously. And back in the day, were you allowed to talk about that on the air at all, or was it pretty much top secret?
No. There was really nothing secret in the shuttle program. It was other than briefly, the Air Force was talking about having what they called a blue shuttle. It was going to be a military version of the space shuttle. They were talking about launching from Vandenberg Air Force Base, and I got on a team that had to evaluate site security, and we were looking at things like microwave intrusion detection and new Reg 220, which is the specification for security at nuclear sites, and we were looking at putting nets across the Michoud Harbor, which is what we use to put the tank on a barge to send to Florida. And it was only serious for about 6 months or so, and then they decided, we're not going to do a blue shuttle. And they picked some other options. So we did end up putting in a 3-zone security system while I was there that was kind of a nightmare to start with, but we had basically Zone 1 was the highest security level. That was the factory itself and some buildings out there, and then the surrounding area that's the land area that surrounded those was Zone 2, and then office buildings and that kind of stuff that were outside of that area was Zone 3. So we ended up putting turnstiles in that you had to go through to get into the Zone 2 areas, and then more turnstiles to get into Zone 1 inside the factory, which was basically the final assembly area and places where the external tank had been built to the point that it had a lot of value, and if you had somebody blow it up, you'd be blowing up $40 million, So that was an outgrowth of the blue shuttle that was envisioned for a while.
Now I'm waiting for somebody to paint their shuttle blue. I just although it might camouflage with the sky.
Yeah, I don't think we do that because we learned how heavy paint is, and you want to have to do that.
Yeah.
So
unless you can come up with some sort of natural substance that is naturally blue, but
right.
Now
well, I think they picked blue because that's the Air Force color. Off we go into the wild blue yonder. So.
Exactly. And when you were at WRNO, you were both a DJ and also chief engineer. How often do musicians visit that station since it was in the heart of New Orleans itself?
Pretty often. I walked into the station one time as Mick Fleetwood was walking out of the control room. He had just done an interview. I don't know what I was doing at the time, but I wasn't listening to the signal, and I didn't even realize he was there. But and Mick Fleetwood is kind of hard to ignore. He's like 6'8" or something, And at only 6'2", I felt a little small standing next to him. And we had the whole cast of Saturday Night Live. Well, I say the whole cast. Quite a few of the folks from Saturday Night Live came down to RNO at one point during, I don't know, I was there doing weekends. It had to have been 1977 or so.
Okay.
But they were going to do a show from New Orleans for Mardi Gras.
That's right, they did.
And they brought in Garrett Morris, who, of course, is from New Orleans. I got a phone call on the hotline while I was on the air. It was a I don't know what night of the week it was. I guess it was Garrett Morris, and I just can't remember who all came out to the studios. But I got a phone call saying that they were coming. I said, "Oh, great! I got to interview. I got to interview the cast of a TV show that I've never ever seen because I was always on the air when they were on the air on Saturday night. So Garrett Morris was pulling my chain. I couldn't tell, when they were serious and when they weren't. So you hate to be in that situation where you gotta interview somebody and you don't know anything about them. So all I knew was that Garrett Morris was from New Orleans. So, but I had never seen his work.
I remember the first season when Chevy Chase did the weekend update, and he says, our top story tonight, we're going to repeat it right now with help with Garrett Morris from the Institute for the Hard of Hearing.
Yeah.
And it's like,
talk really loud. Real loud. Yeah, those are classics. And I had, as far as people from New Orleans, Steve Stills came out one night, brought a tape of his Thoroughfare Gap album, I think it was, one night. And it was the same thing. I got a phone call from somebody saying, Steve Stills is coming out. He's going to bring his new album. Oh, okay. So at least I knew who Steve Stills was, and I'd seen him a time or two. So I got asked intelligent questions, and then Bo Roberts, who went by the name of Sambo when he was at WRNO, probably not politically correct anymore, but he's Bo Roberts in Dallas. But he lived in the same motel where the studios for WRNO were at the time. So, and he got the word that Stills was coming over, so he came over, and it was kind of a tag team interview. And at some point, Steve had a tape on a 10-inch reel, and we put it on the old Ampex in the control room, which is less than kindly to recording tape sometimes, especially if you're fast forwarding it. And we were trying to fast forward to different songs on the tape that Steve wanted to play. And at some point, we managed to stretch his demo tape from the machine, and he was not a happy camper at that point. But
Fortune was not the master reel, I assume.
No, it was a dub, but still, he was using it. He was going around to different places, and that was the tape he brought. So now it kind of had some wow and flutter in it. But he was from which high school he went to in New Orleans, but he also lived in Covington across the lake. And I didn't know that at the time until he told me. And, I think I just read recently, again, that they were talking about Steve Stills, having spent time in New Orleans. So we've have had a few people here. Not, I'm sure not to the extent of Los Angeles and where you are, but... Oh, and by the way, I did some research. You are not the Josh Jacobs who played football for the Crimson Tide for a couple of years, and you're not the Josh Jacobs that played in 3 NFL Pro Bowls or was drafted early in the 2019 round of the draft. But I did find that out about you.
I'm bummed about that, but I'm also not bummed that I'm not the Josh Jacobs related to the Kardashians either, as far as lawyer was concerned. So that I'm proud about.
And then I was going to say, the Josh Jacobs, the football player aside, I'm willing to bet you're white and you can't even jump. Right?
Yep, that's right. Although the funny thing about the Josh Jacobs football player, who now plays for the Green Bay Packers, he was born February 11th. I was born February 14th. So I like to joke, he was born 3 days too early, or I was born 3 days too late. We could have had matching birthdays at least. Well, 26 years apart.
My wife splits the difference. She was born on February 12th.
Oh. So, yeah, my sister was born February 12th too, so Abe Lincoln's birthday.
Yeah.
I was born the exact same day and year as Rob Thomas, lead singer of Matchbox 20, as well as former football player Drew Bledsoe of the New England Patriots. So,
okay. Well, I think I share my birthday with Jimi Hendrix and Caroline Kennedy, if I remember right. But I guess only one of those two is still around. But
yeah, Sweet Caroline.
Yep.
We're talking with JD the DJ, whose evenings from 7 to midnight on Tix 94.3 in New Orleans. And next time, JD reveals a song that was a top 40 hit for both Bobby Darin as well as Louis Armstrong. And he also talks about the local New Orleans version of Breakfast with the Beatles.